If you're the active Christian mom who has ever said at some point, I just have no core strength left anymore after giving birth to your babies, then please know that you are not alone, because I hear this on a somewhat regularly basis from a lot of my clients that start working with me. And it's no wonder why. Our bodies have gone through a miraculous change to create space for a baby. And what is left after a baby does require work to rebuild strength. But the good news is that there are really practical and actionable steps that you can be taking now to rebuild your core strength. And spoiler alert, it's not just doing more kegels. So stay tuned for this practical episode and grab a pen and paper as we dive into rebuilding your core strength postpartum.
Postpartum is hard. One second we feel like our bodies are miraculous, and the next we feel like we're a complete mess, out of touch with the strong, confident women we used to be, all while the fitness industry pressures us to bounce back as quickly as possible to a body that never looked like it was pregnant to begin with. That's why, whether we're 3 days postpartum or 3 years postpartum, we need the refreshing truth of gospel-focused fitness to give us energy for the physical challenges of motherhood, peace with our postpartum bodies, and kingdom-centered motivation to train for strength and stamina. So mama, whether you're sipping on cold coffee or folding 5-day-old laundry, I pray by listening every Monday, you become equipped, encouraged, and empowered for a strong motherhood, all for God's glory. This is the Strong After Birth podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Hello and welcome to the show. And I have to say, of all of the episodes that I've recorded, this one probably took the most heart to do because I had what felt like the weakest core really right after pregnancy. And it was surprising to me how long it took for me to even just rebuild the awareness of my core, even with the knowledge. But there's something about going through an experience, I believe, that just creates a different reality and perception of how we see our bodies. And so I want to start off this episode by just encouraging you in one very important way, and that is your body right now is totally capable of getting stronger. And you have to believe that regardless of how many children you have had. It's so important for us to believe that at a root level so that the fruit of that root is that we will take action steps to make that happen. Now, I want to dive into four very practical steps that are needed to rebuild our core strength. But before I do, I want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the mistakes that I've seen women make when it comes to rebuilding their core strength. And the biggest primary mistake I've seen women make is that they rush into it. They see their stomach and a lot of body image struggles come up and they want to get into fixing mode. And so part of the fixing mode is that we want to flatten our stomach. We want to bridge the gap, and we are bombarded with so many advertisements from Pinterest and YouTube and Instagram, all telling us that if we do this one magical exercise, we can do it. We can bridge the gap. We can flatten our tummy. And guys, it's just fitness culture again, all over us, telling us that our bodies have to look a certain way to be healthy. And I encourage you as sister in Christ, that is not the case. But because of this advertising, I've seen a lot of women who jump into core training from a very superficial approach. They do exercises like planks and crunches, and they dive into literally the more superficial muscles without strengthening the deeper core muscles and our pelvic floor underneath. And as a result, we've skipped a really important step in the process. And as the puzzle pieces come together, we often find a missing piece. We often feel like I've been doing the work, I've been doing all of these exercises, nothing is changing. And that is because deep down, we have missed a very important step in the process. So I'm going to be giving you all of the 4 vital pieces and steps to rebuild your core strength directly after postpartum. And I am going to be starting from the 0 to 6 week timeline. However, if you are now a year postpartum and never went through the process of rebuilding your core strength, please do not fear. You can literally start at 0 to 6 because especially if you haven't already been doing this, you're going to see a great benefit going through each step of the process as if you were recently postpartum. So let's go ahead and dive in. First step, and often the step that is most overlooked, that you won't find in mom fitness apps is the step of focus and awareness on your breath. Now, the timeline for this, like I said, is 0 to 6 weeks, but it's so critical that we establish a mind-body connection to our breath and to train our body and our pelvic floor specifically to contract when we exhale and relax when we inhale. And when we practice this type of diaphragmatic breathing and gentle floor exercises, this allows us to connect our breath again to our core. Breathing is one of the things that can change drastically throughout pregnancy. As our blood volume increases, our respiratory rate also increases. And often the weight of baby on our pelvic floor reduces our pelvic floor's capacity to relax and contract fully. So it's really important that we retrain the relaxation and contraction rhythm while we are in the early stages of postpartum. Now, like I said in the intro, if you have not started here, it's okay. You can start today. You can start today by working on your breath. And what I encourage clients to do is practice something called the core connection breath. I have put together a quick tutorial of this that's going to be in the show notes, so make sure you check that out as a short video. But the core connection breath is a vital piece to recovery postpartum because it helps us to connect our core with our breathing pattern. And when we can create this foundational habit, it makes all of our movement so much more efficient and effective and can prevent a lot of downward pressure that can happen as active women when we are moving our bodies, whether that movement is lifting a barbell, a dumbbell, or even lifting up our kids. So step 1, focus on your breath and your awareness of your pelvic floor contraction and relaxation. Step number 2 is a gentle core activation. Now, when I was talking about your breath in step 1, we are talking about your diaphragm and your pelvic floor, muscles that sit atop our rib cage and beneath our rib cage. Now I'm talking more about the muscles actually of our core, or what most people tend to think of, like your rectus and transverse abdominis, muscles that sit in the front of our trunk. Now, we can start to, once we have connected our breath to our pelvic floor, we can then start to gently activate these muscles with our breath, hence why it's so important to start at step 1. Now, this can look practically, for example, like doing posterior pelvic tilts in different positions. I like to start my clients doing posterior pelvic tilts to focus on contracting their transverse abdominis and their rectus abdominis in a glute bridge type of position. And then we go into different pelvic tilts from a cat-cow position or even a tall kneeling position so that they are then able to transfer their core strengthening and stability to different positions, which is really important, as you can guess, for functional movements of our daily life. This is the phase that I also encourage clients to learn what is proper alignment and engagement of the transverse abdominis. Using a stability ball for added support or engagement is also really helpful here, but we're training how to engage that muscle all over again. Now, one of my favorite cues for this phase is to think about zipping up your belly button. And we're going to practice this here together. So hopefully you're not driving or doing something risky, but I want you to put your finger in your belly button and I want you to take a big exhale like you're blowing out 1,000 candles on a cake. Now, towards the end of that exhale, keep exhaling if you're listening, keep exhaling. Towards the end of that exhale, you might notice your belly button pull up just a smidge. That is the end range contraction of your lowest or deepest core muscle called your transverse abdominis. And that is the muscle that surrounds our trunk and supports our pelvic floor. And that's the muscle that we really want to focus on finding alignment and contraction in with our movements and with our breath. So once you've gone through phase 2, which can last anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks. So now we're looking up to like a 12-week timeline to give you perspective of how long this can take. We're going to progress to what I would call progressive core strengthening. Now, this is where we start to get a little bit more dynamic, whereas phase 1 is literally just laying down and breathing or sitting and breathing. And phase 2 is just doing some gentle, small, isolated movements. Phase 3 is where we start to take our core strength training to the next level. Now, this can look like, for example, doing dead bugs or bird dogs and planks, often modified. I would really encourage clients to start those modified because most people start their planks and they feel it in their low back. Spoiler alert, if you're feeling a plank in your low back, you are not contracting your transverse abdominis and might want to take a couple steps back so that you can focus on getting that contraction and stability first before lifting up off your knees on a plank. That's just a little freebie for you and a side tangent. Now, this phase is really important because we want to start to integrate different types of core contractions, whether that is a contraction in the transverse plane or a contraction in the sagittal plane. What that means is the difference between doing a side plank or a front plank. And here we want to start to add a little bit of variety so that our core can resist different forces in different directions. A toddler in one arm and an infant in the other, right? We are preparing our body for the challenges of motherhood. Now, this can last anywhere up to 3 to 6 months postpartum. So this is where we want to start to challenge our core. You're going to think about adding more reps to the exercises you are doing, challenging maybe your bird dogs by adding in some dumbbells or challenging your dead bugs by using a resistance band, either around your knees or around your hands. And this is where it's really important, I believe, to work with a coach, because this is where you will notice if you have laid a foundation or not, particularly as we go into the next phase. Now, the next phase, which I would say is the last phase, number 4, is the functional movement integration phase, or putting it all together. Now, this is the phase where we start to incorporate core strength into more dynamic exercises. So think about doing our squats or our deadlifts and integrating a core contraction either at the top of those or focusing on core breathing and bracing while we are lifting. And this is really at that 6-month mark postpartum. Now, like I said, if you've listened to me go through all of these phases and you're like, Laura, I never did breath work, or I kind of did, but I really wasn't consistent with it, or I didn't take time to do the gentle core activation and I jumped right into the integration phase, just know that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but I would highly recommend that you just take a few steps back, which I'm sure you might feel some resistance to, but again, note the resistance and where it's coming from. Is that you're feeling like you have this pressure to have a perfect body right now, and just acknowledge that your goal might not be the perfect body. Maybe your goal actually is to be strong and healthy. So just take a moment to kind of temp check that thought if you are feeling resistance to slowing down, like I am asking you to do. So there you have it, the 4 phases. And just so you know, like rebuilding your core and your pelvic floor, it doesn't have to feel like a mystery, but it is going to take some work. And while you can literally take the framework that I'm giving you today and run with it, if you want that work done for you and you want a coach to support you along the way, get on the waitlist for True Strength Builder and True Strength Baby Builder that will be coming out this winter. I'm so excited to help guide you through the entire year postpartum. Then you can transition to True Strength Builder's training plan. The plan is complete. It is designed to rebuild core strength in a body neutral and Christ-honoring approach. So get on the waitlist by heading over to www.truestrengthcollective.com/TSB and join us there on the waitlist. And then after you do that, you're going to want to head on over to the show notes and check out the core connection breath to get started in phase 1 if you have not started there yet. So check that out in the show notes. Guys, I hope that this episode gave you some really practical tips and approach to know how to rebuild your core strength postpartum. Like I said from the get-go, you are strong, mama, and your body is so capable of strength. And I hope that you believe that to be true. Until next time, friends, stay strong. All the love, Coach Laura.